Morning arrived quietly over Moonlight Falls. The snow from the night before still covered the rooftops, the sidewalks, and the dark pine trees surrounding Blackwood Mountain. But the storm had passed. Sunlight reflected across the frozen streets. Smoke rose from chimneys. Shopkeepers cleared snow from their doorways. For the first time in 2 days, the town seemed peaceful again. At Blackwood House, that peace felt temporary. The weathered archive box rested in the center of the library table. Its cracked leather strap had been placed beside it. Several yellowed folders were stacked carefully inside. No one had opened them yet. Thomas stood beside the fireplace, watching the box as if it might speak first. Ava sat across from Lucien. Her hands were wrapped around a cup of tea. She had been awake for hours, so had everyone else.
The hospital was very clear. The driver was transporting these records legally. There was nothing suspicious in the shipping documents.
That doesn't make their arrival accidental.
Number, it doesn't.
Lucien looked toward the archive box. Victor Blackwood's name had already brought too many unanswered questions back into the house, Emily's recordings. The photographs, the old quarry, the crescent moon carved into stone. And now, a box of forgotten records had returned during the first unnatural snowstorm of the season.
Could Victor have arranged this?
Not recently.
His answer came without hesitation.
But Victor was always patient. He believed information mattered more than timing. If he wanted something found, he would have understood that it might take decades.
Lucien leaned forward.
Then we begin with the first folder.
Thomas immediately raised one hand.
Not yet.
Lucien's expression tightened.
The archive was involved in an accident. We don't know whether anything is missing. We don't know who handled it before the hospital called. And we still don't know why Emily appears beside Victor in that photograph.
Waiting won't make it safer.
Number. But opening it without recording what we find could destroy the only order Victor left behind.
Ava looked again at the box. Thomas was right. The folders appeared old, but carefully arranged. Several were tied with faded string. Others carried dates written in Victor's handwriting. On a mistake could separate documents that had been kept together for a reason. Footsteps approached from the hallway. Lily entered the library carrying a paper bag.
I brought breakfast.
She placed it on the table beside the archive box. The smell of warm bread filled the room. For a brief moment, everyone remembered they had not eaten.
I thought mysterious family records would be easier to understand with food.
That is probably the wisest thing anyone has said this morning.
Lily smiled and began handing out pastries. Then she noticed the silence in the room. Her eyes moved toward the wooden box.
So that is it.
Victor's archive.
And no one has opened it.
We are being careful.
You are staring at it.
Carefully.
Ava laughed softly. Even Lucien's expression relaxed, only slightly. A few minutes later, Ethan entered through the front door. Cold air followed him into the hallway. He removed his coat and joined them in the library.
The roads are clear enough. I can return to the hospital and finish the transfer paperwork.
I'll come with you.
Number, you should stay here.
Lucien looked at him. Ethan nodded toward the archive.
If someone knew those records were arriving, they may already know where they are now.
The room became quiet again. Ava looked toward the tall library windows. Outside, the snow-covered grounds appeared empty. No footprints, no vehicles, nothing moving beyond the trees. Still, Ethan's warning remained.
I'll check the house security.
I can help.
You can help me at the hospital.
Lily turned toward him.
The driver may remember who gave him the archive or where he collected it.
You think he'll talk to us?
I think he'll talk to you before he talks to me.
Because I am friendly.
Because you ask questions before looking suspicious?
Lily smiled.
That sounds almost like a compliment.
Don't get used to it.
The quiet exchange passed quickly. But Ava noticed the way Lily looked at Ethan after he turned away. Not curious. Not amused. Concerned. As if she had noticed something no one else had. Thomas walked toward the control panel beside the library door. He pressed several buttons. Small green lights appeared across the screen.
Main security system is functioning. Backup power is ready. External cameras are clear.
Then we document everything before opening the first folder.
Thomas nodded. Ava reached for a notebook. Ethan picked up his coat again. Lily took one final pastry from the bag. For the first time that morning, they had a plan. Then every light in Blackwood House went out. The fireplace continued burning, but the lamps disappeared. The security panel went dark. The heating system stopped. The low hum of electricity vanished from the walls. For 1 second, no one moved. Then the sound reached them, not from inside the house, from outside. Across the distant town, car alarms began sounding. Voices rose in confusion. Somewhere far below the hill, brakes screamed against the frozen road. Thomas turned toward the window. Moonlight Falls had vanished into darkness. Not one streetlight remained, not one house, not one building. The entire town had lost power at exactly the same moment.
The generator should start.
Everyone waited. 1 second, 2, 3. Nothing happened. Thomas stared at the dead control panel. His face changed.
This is not an ordinary outage. End of section 1.
For several seconds, Blackwood House remained completely silent. The fire inside the library fireplace continued burning. Its orange light danced across the walls, throwing long shadows through the room. Without electricity, the century-old house suddenly felt much older, much quieter. Thomas moved first. He crossed the library in 3 quick strides and opened the electrical control cabinet beside the security panel. A small flashlight hung inside. He switched it on. The narrow beam illuminated rows of switches and monitoring equipment. Everything was dark, even the emergency indicators.
That is impossible.
He immediately walked toward the rear hallway.
Stay here.
I am coming.
The two disappeared into the basement staircase. Ava and Lily exchanged a glance. Outside, distant voices drifted up from town. Dogs barked. A car horn blared somewhere below the hill. The silence that followed each sound somehow felt even heavier. Ethan had already taken out his phone. No signal. He frowned. A moment later, one weak bar appeared. He quickly dialed the hospital. The call connected after several attempts.
Ethan Wolf? Yes, slow down.
His expression changed immediately.
What happened?
The hospital lost power too.
They have generators.
They're not working.
Everyone looked at him.
None of them?
The room fell silent again. Hospitals were designed for emergencies. Their backup systems were tested constantly. For all of them to fail was almost unthinkable. The basement door opened. Thomas and Lucien returned. Thomas's face had become unusually serious.
The generator never started.
Can you fix it?
Thomas didn't answer immediately. Instead, he placed the flashlight on the table and slowly removed a pair of work gloves.
I need everyone downstairs.
Minutes later, they stood inside the generator room. The large diesel generator occupied almost half the basement. Normally, once the main power failed, it would have started automatically within seconds. Now, it sat completely silent. Thomas knelt beside the control panel. He opened the metal housing. His flashlight moved carefully across the wiring. Then, he stopped. He didn't say anything. He simply stared.
What is it?
Thomas slowly stepped aside. The others looked inside. Several heavy electrical cables had been cut cleanly, not burned, not broken. Cut, each end showed the same smooth edge. Whoever had done it had used professional tools.
Someone did this.
Yes,
When?
recently.
He gently touched one of the cable ends. The exposed copper remained bright. No corrosion, no dust. The damage couldn't have been very old.
Within the last day.
Lucien's eyes narrowed.
They knew we'd rely on backup power.
They counted on it.
Ethan's phone vibrated. He answered immediately.
Yes, understood.
He ended the call.
I just spoke to my uncle.
Everyone looked toward him.
The Wolf Estate generator was sabotaged?
The same way?
He says the cables were cut?
No one spoke. Two completely different estates. Two independent backup systems. damaged in exactly the same way. That wasn't coincidence. It was preparation. Thomas slowly stood. He looked toward the silent machine, then toward Lucien.
This wasn't done to create inconvenience. It was done to remove certainty.
Lucien understood immediately normally. During any emergency, people would gather at Blackwood House or the Wolf Estate. Both had emergency power. Both could provide heat, communications, medical supplies, safety tonight. Neither could. Another phone call interrupted the silence. This time, it came through Ava's phone. The signal faded in and out. She answered anyway.
Hello? Mrs. Carter?
The elderly woman's frightened voice barely came through the speaker.
Please slow down. Yes, I understand.
Ava looked at the others.
The retirement home has no electricity. Several residents depend on powered medical equipment. They're asking if anyone can help.
Before anyone could answer, another call arrived. Then another. The volunteer fire department, the grocery store, the church. Every part of town was reporting the same thing. Darkness, confusion, no backup power. Thomas quietly picked up the severed cable from the floor. He turned it over in his hands. The cut was almost perfectly straight, too perfect.
This wasn't vandalism.
He looked directly at Lucien.
Someone surveyed this house. They knew exactly where the generator was. They knew exactly which cables to cut. And they knew exactly how long we'd need to repair it.
Lucien looked toward the basement ceiling. Beyond it, the entire town waited in darkness.
Then they wanted us distracted.
Yes.
Thomas's answer came quietly, almost reluctantly.
The question is, what are they doing while every light in Moonlight Falls is out?
No one answered, because they all realized the same thing at the same time. The blackout was never the objective. It was only the beginning. End of section 2. For several seconds, no one moved. The basement felt colder than before, not because the heating system had stopped, because everyone understood what Thomas had just said. The blackout itself wasn't the danger. It was the cover. Someone who wanted Moonlight Falls looking somewhere else. Lucien climbed the basement stairs first. The others followed close behind. When they returned to the library, the room seemed even darker. Only the fireplace still cast enough light to see one another. Outside the windows, the entire town had disappeared into shadow. No streetlights, no porch lights. Not even the blinking radio tower beyond the river. Moonlight Falls had become a silhouette beneath the winter sky. Lucien walked to the large map hanging on the library wall. Thomas illuminated it with the flashlight. Roads, neighborhoods, the hospital, the volunteer fire station, the retirement home, the public library. Everything important lay scattered across the town.
We don't have enough people.
Number, but we have enough to stop panic?
Lucien nodded. That had to come first. Fear spread faster than darkness. He pointed toward the center of town.
Ava, the church still has a wood stove. The community hall next door can hold half the town. Get people somewhere warm.
What about the elderly?
Take blankets from the church. If anyone can't walk, I'll carry them.
Ava nodded immediately. No hesitation. Lucien turned toward Ethan.
The hospital.
I am already on my way?
Lucien continued.
Check the driver. See whether the archive is still there. And ask if anyone noticed strangers before the blackout.
I will?
Lucien looked toward Lily. She straightened instinctively.
What do you need?
Stay with Ethan. People trust you. If families begin arriving, they'll need someone calm.
Got it.
Thomas quietly folded the town map.
I'll remain here.
Alone?
I am exactly where whoever planned this expects me to be.
Everyone looked toward him. Thomas continued calmly.
If someone wants this house empty, they'll be disappointed.
Lucien understood immediately. Blackwood House still contained Victor's archive. If the blackout had another purpose, the archive could already be one of the targets. Leaving it unguarded would be foolish.
Lock every entrance.
They're already locked.
Check them again.
Thomas smiled faintly.
I was planning to.
The smile disappeared almost as quickly as it had appeared. A distant church bell suddenly rang once, then stopped. The automatic clock mechanism had failed without electricity. The single unfinished chime echoed across the valley. The sound unsettled everyone. It made the town feel abandoned. Ava wrapped her scarf around her neck.
I've never seen Moonlight Falls this dark.
Neither have I.
Coming from Thomas, those words carried unusual weight. Lucien opened the front door. Cold air rushed inside. The sky had already begun turning gray. Clouds gathered once again above Blackwood Mountain. Not another snowstorm. Just enough to swallow the afternoon light. The town below seemed darker by the minute. Parked along the driveway were only 3 vehicles. Lucien's SUV, Ethan's pickup, Ava's car. Normally, neighbors would already be driving toward Blackwood House whenever the power failed. Today, the driveway remained empty.
They're staying home.
They probably think the lights will come back soon.
They won't.
No one argued. Not after seeing the generator. Lucien looked toward Ava.
Be careful.
You too?
Their eyes met for only a moment. No promises. No dramatic farewell. Neither of them needed one. They had learned that simply returning safely was promise enough. Ethan started his truck. Its headlights cut through the darkness. Lily climbed into the passenger seat. Before closing the door, she looked back toward Blackwood House. Something about the silent mansion unsettled her. Not fear, expectation. As though the house itself knew tonight wasn't over. Lucien and Ava watched the pickup disappear down the hill. Then they climbed into Lucien's SUV. The engine started immediately. Warm air slowly filled the cabin. Lucien switched on the headlights. The beam stretched across the snowy road and stopped, barely 50 yards ahead. A massive pine tree lay across the only road leading into town. Fresh splinters still gleamed beneath the headlights. The trunk hadn't fallen naturally. Its base had been cut cleanly. Lucien quietly shifted the vehicle into park. Neither he nor Ava spoke. Simone hadn't only planned the blackout. Simone had planned where they would go next. End of section 3. Lucien switched off the engine for a moment. Neither he nor Ava spoke. The fallen pine stretched across the narrow mountain road from one side to the other. Its branches disappeared into the surrounding snowbanks. The trunk was nearly 3 feet thick. No ordinary car could pass. Lucien stepped out into the freezing air. His flashlight swept across the snow. Fresh footprints. Only one set. Large boots. They ended beside the trunk. He followed the beam downward. The cut was clean. Almost perfectly level. Saw marks remained visible beneath the fresh wood.
It didn't fall.
Number.
He placed one gloved hand against the trunk. The wood was still damp. Fresh sap slowly oozed from the cut.
This happened recently.
Ava looked down the empty road. No tire tracks. No workers. No warning signs. Whoever had cut the tree had already disappeared. Lucien walked back to the SUV. He unfolded a paper map from the glove compartment. Most visitors used GPS. People who lived in Moonlight Falls still kept maps. Winter storms had taught them that electronics couldn't always be trusted.
Another road?
1.
His finger traced a narrow gravel road looping around the western ridge. Longer, steeper. Normally unused during winter, but still passable. If the snow wasn't too deep.
We'll lose 20 minutes.
We don't have 20 minutes.
I know.
He folded the map. The SUV slowly turned around. Its headlights swept across the dark forest. For one brief second, something reflected in the trees. A tiny flash, like glass catching light. Lucien stopped immediately.
What is it?
He stared into the forest. Nothing moved. Only snow drifting quietly between the pines. After several seconds, he continued driving. Neither of them noticed that the reflection never moved. Someone had been standing there, watching. Far below, Moonlight Falls grew darker with every passing minute. The grocery store owner rolled candles onto the front counter. Families carried flashlights through silent streets. Children asked when the lights would return. No one had an answer. Outside the church, Pastor Owen unlocked the front doors. Wood smoke already drifted from the old chimney. Several volunteers hurried inside carrying folding chairs and blankets. The church had no electricity, but it still had heat and hope. Ava looked through the windshield as they entered town. People stood outside their homes talking across fences. Others walked toward the church carrying lanterns. The atmosphere felt strangely calm. Not because people weren't afraid, because they were trying not to frighten one another.
They're handling it better than I expected?
They trust each other.
Ava smiled.
They trust you too.
Lucien didn't answer. Instead, he parked beside the church. Before he could open the door, 3 elderly residents were already struggling through the snow. One woman carried an empty oxygen cylinder. Another man leaned heavily on a cane. Lucien was beside them before they reached the sidewalk. Without saying a word, he lifted the heavy cylinder with one hand, then offered his other arm to the elderly man. The old gentleman looked surprised.
Thank you, son.
Lucien simply nodded. He helped them through the church doors. Inside, dozens of candles flickered across the sanctuary. Their warm light transformed the room. Children sat wrapped in quilts. Neighbors poured coffee from camping stoves. Someone quietly played an old acoustic guitar near the fireplace. Fear was still present, but kindness was louder. Ava immediately joined several volunteers. She helped organize blankets, assigned seats for elderly residents, found toys for restless children. Within minutes, the confusion had begun turning into order. Lucien carried more supplies from nearby vehicles. Firewood, water medical kits. No one asked who was in charge. Everyone simply worked together. As he stacked another load of firewood beside the stove, a little girl tugged gently on his coat.
Mister, are the lights coming back tonight?
Lucien knelt until they were eye level. He looked toward the dark windows, then back at the child.
I don't know.
The little girl's face fell slightly. Lucien smiled. A real one. Small, gentle.
But I do know. You are not facing the dark alone.
The little girl smiled back. She nodded and ran toward her mother. Ava had watched the entire conversation from across the room. She couldn't help smiling. The man who believed people feared him most was quietly becoming the person everyone instinctively turned toward. At that exact moment, Ethan's phone rang. The signal lasted only a few seconds. He answered immediately. His expression changed before he even spoke.
What? When?
His voice became serious, very serious.
We're on our way?
The call ended. He looked directly at Lucien.
The retirement home? They've reported smoke? End of section 4?
For a heartbeat, the church became completely silent. Everyone had heard Ethan's last words. Smoke retirement home. The 2 words were enough. Lucien was already moving. He grabbed his coat from the back of a wooden chair.
The call came from one of the nurses. They smelled smoke. They haven't found the source yet.
How far?
5 minutes. Less if the roads are clear.
Lucien looked toward the crowded sanctuary. Nearly 80 residents had gathered inside the church. Children, parents, elderly couples. The room was finally beginning to feel safe. Leaving now would mean leaving them without one of the people organizing everything. Pastor Owen stepped forward.
Go. We'll take care of everyone here.
Lucien hesitated. Owen smiled.
This town has more than 4 people willing to help.
Around the room, several volunteers immediately stood. A grocery store owner, 2 high school teachers, an off-duty mechanic, 3 college students home for winter break. Without anyone asking, they quietly began taking over Ava's work. Blankets continued moving from one corner of the room to another. Coffee was poured. Children were gathered together for games. The church never stopped functioning. Ava watched them with a smile.
They don't wait to be told.
They never have.
That was Moonlight Falls. Small enough that everyone knew everyone, strong enough that nobody waited for permission to help. Just as Lucien reached the front door, a small voice stopped him.
Mr. Lucien!
He turned. The little girl from earlier stood holding a battery-powered lantern. Its warm yellow light flickered gently.
You forgot this!
Lucien looked down. The lantern wasn't his.
You'll need it more than I will.
Lucien smiled. He knelt beside her once again.
Thank you, but I think you should keep it.
What if it gets dark?
Lucien looked around the church. Dozens of candles glowed softly. Families sat shoulder to shoulder. Neighbors shared food with people they barely knew. The room wasn't bright, but it wasn't dark either.
It already isn't.
The little girl looked around, then slowly smiled. She hugged the lantern against her coat.
Okay.
As Lucien stood, the girl's mother quietly touched his arm.
Thank you for staying.
Lucien paused. Those simple words stayed with him. Not for saving us. Not for protecting us. Simply for staying outside. The cold air struck immediately. The town remained wrapped in darkness. Only scattered candles glowed behind frosted windows. The church bell tower stood quietly against the evening sky. Its silhouette reminded Ava of an old lighthouse. Small, steady, guiding people home. Lucien started the SUV. This time, the road ahead remained clear. The detour had brought them safely into town. Ethan's pickup pulled in behind them. The two vehicles rolled slowly through the dark streets. As they drove, they passed neighbors helping neighbors. One family carried firewood across the road. Another shared a portable generator with 3 nearby houses. Teenagers shoveled snow for an elderly couple. No one complained. No one argued. Everyone simply worked.
I've lived in larger cities. I've never seen anything like this.
When winter comes, people remember they need each other.
Ava looked out the window again. Perhaps that was why Emily had loved this town so much. Even in darkness, its people created light. Ahead. A faint gray haze rose above the rooftops. At first, it looked like fog. Then Lucien noticed something else. The wind carried a bitter smell. Burning plastic. Burning wood.
That is not chimney smoke.
Lucien pressed the accelerator. Both vehicles surged forward. As they rounded the final corner, the retirement home came into view. Thin streams of smoke drifted from the rear of the building. Residents were gathering near the entrance. Some still wearing slippers. Some wrapped only in blankets. Nurses rushed back and forth carrying emergency supplies. Then, a bright orange glow suddenly flashed through one of the rear windows. The smoke turned black.
The fire just broke through.
Lucien had already opened the driver's door before the SUV came to a complete stop. End of section 5. Lucien was already running before the SUV came to a complete stop. Cold air mixed with thick black smoke. The sharp smell of burning plastic spread across the parking lot. Behind him, Ethan and Lily jumped from the pickup. Ava was only a few steps behind. The retirement home had not yet become an inferno. Most of the smoke poured from the rear kitchen. Orange flames flickered behind one shattered window. The fire alarm screamed without stopping. Residents gathered outside in confusion. Some were wrapped only in blankets. Others still wore slippers. Several nurses hurried between them, counting names again and again.
Everyone stay together. Please don't go back inside.
A frightened orderly spotted Ethan.
The kitchen caught fire. We evacuated as many people as we could, but she stopped.
But what?
We can't find 4 residents.
Everything around them suddenly became very quiet. Only the fire alarm remained.
Where were they last seen?
2nd floor, west wing. 2 can't walk without wheelchairs. 1 has dementia, and 1 refuses to leave his room.
Lucien had already started toward the entrance. Ethan grabbed his arm.
The staircase may already be blocked.
Then I'll use another one.
You'll have less than 5 minutes?
Lucien nodded once. That was enough. He disappeared into the smoke. The front door slammed shut behind him. Inside, the hallway was almost completely dark. Emergency lights had failed with the blackout. Only flames from the rear of the building illuminated drifting smoke. The air was already difficult to breathe. Lucien pulled his coat over his nose. He listened. Not for fire, for heartbeats. 1, 2, 3, 4. Faint scattered across the upper floor, still alive. Outside. Ethan turned immediately toward Ava and Lily.
We don't wait. We clear everyone outside. If Lucien brings people down, we move them farther from the building.
Understood.
I am with you.
Ava hurried toward the residents gathered near the entrance. Several elderly women were crying. One gentleman kept asking for his wife. Another insisted he had left family photographs upstairs.
We'll find them. But right now, I need everyone to keep moving away from the building.
Her voice wasn't loud. It didn't need to be. People listened. Something about her calmness made others calmer too. Meanwhile, Lily knelt beside an elderly woman shivering beneath a thin blanket.
Can I borrow your hands?
The woman looked confused. Lily smiled warmly, then gently wrapped both of the woman's hands around a cup of hot tea someone had brought from the church.
Much better.
The woman smiled weakly. Her shaking slowly eased. Inside the building, Lucien reached the main staircase. Halfway up, a section of burning ceiling collapsed onto the steps. Wood exploded into sparks. The staircase disappeared behind flames. Without stopping, Lucien turned toward the service hallway. Old maintenance stairs, narrow, steel instead of wood, still intact. He climbed them 2 steps at a time. Smoke grew thicker on the second floor. Visibility dropped to only a few feet. The fire alarm had finally stopped. Now, the only sounds were crackling flames and 4 heartbeats. Lucien followed the nearest one. Room 12. The door was shut. He pushed it open. Inside, an elderly man sat calmly beside the window. He looked almost annoyed.
I told them I am not leaving without my wife.
Lucien scanned the room. Only one bed, only one chair. No one else.
Your wife isn't here.
She'll come back.
Lucien understood immediately. The man's wife had passed away years ago. But tonight, memory and fear had become tangled together. Smoke continued pouring beneath the doorway. There wasn't time to argue. Lucien knelt beside him.
She asked me to bring you outside.
The old man looked into Lucien's eyes for a long moment. Then, very slowly, he nodded.
She always worried too much.
Lucien smiled gently.
I've heard.
He lifted the man into his arms as though he weighed almost nothing, then turned back toward the hallway. 3 heartbeats remained, 3 people still waiting, and somewhere below, the fire was spreading faster. End of section 6. The hallway had almost disappeared beneath smoke. Lucien carried the elderly man down the narrow steel staircase. Each step echoed through the building. The old man coughed weakly against Lucien's shoulder. Below them, flames rolled across the ceiling of the first floor. The fire was spreading faster than anyone expected. As soon as Lucien reached the entrance, Ethan was already there.
I've got him?
Lucien carefully transferred the elderly man into Ethan's arms. The old gentleman looked around in confusion.
My wife.
We'll tell her you made it?
The old man smiled faintly. For the first time that night, he stopped struggling. Lucien immediately turned back toward the building. Ava caught his sleeve.
How many?
3.
She looked into his eyes. He was covered in soot. His breathing had become heavier. Still, there was no hesitation.
Come back!
Lucien gave one small nod, then disappeared into the smoke again. Outside, the evacuation continued. Lily moved steadily through the growing crowd. She knelt beside frightened residents, checked blankets, counted wheelchairs, made sure no one had been left behind. A retired nurse quietly joined her, then another volunteer. Soon, without anyone giving orders, small teams formed naturally. One group distributed water, Another checked medications. Another kept residents together by room numbers. Chaos slowly became organization. Ethan crouched beside the charge nurse.
Who is still inside?
Mrs. Dawson, Mr. Keller, and Mrs. Brooks.
She pointed toward a floor plan taped beside the entrance.
2 rooms here. 1 here. The west hallway.
Any oxygen tanks?
Storage room, 1st floor. It hasn't caught fire yet.
Ethan's eyes narrowed. If those cylinders heated up, the entire rescue would become impossible. He grabbed a portable radio from one of the firefighters who had just arrived.
The oxygen storage. Cool it first. Nobody opens that room unless we're ready.
Understood.
The volunteer firefighters moved immediately. Water lines were pulled toward the rear hallway. The first hose finally came alive. A stream of water disappeared into the smoke. Inside, Lucien found the second resident. A woman sat quietly in her wheelchair near the nurse's station. She wasn't trapped. She was waiting.
I didn't want anyone forgetting the others.
Lucien knelt beside her.
They haven't.
Good. Then let's go.
Without another word, he unlocked the wheelchair. One hand pushed. The other shielded her from falling debris. The hallway groaned overhead. A burning ceiling tile crashed behind them. Heat washed across his back. He never looked behind. Outside, Ava saw the wheelchair emerge through the smoke. Several volunteers rushed forward together. Nobody waited to be asked. One lifted the front wheels. Another steadied the blanket around the elderly woman. A third guided them toward the church shuttle bus waiting nearby. The rescue took less than 15 seconds. Everyone already knew their place. Lucien turned around again. Only one heartbeat remained inside. One, slow, steady, almost unbelievably calm. He stopped for half a second. Something wasn't right. The heartbeat wasn't moving. It wasn't calling for help. It was waiting. Lucien followed the sound down the west hallway. Smoke covered almost everything. Only one room still had its door closed, room 21. He opened it. An elderly woman sat beside the window. A framed photograph rested in her lap. She looked up and smiled as though she had been expecting him.
I knew someone would come.
Lucien stepped inside.
We have to leave.
She looked down at the photograph.
My husband built this place. We planted every maple tree outside. I thought I should say goodbye.
Lucien followed her gaze toward the snow-covered courtyard. Beyond the smoke, the old maple trees still stood, branches covered in white, exactly as they had for generations. The ceiling above them creaked loudly. A beam cracked. Ash drifted onto the floor. There was no time left. Lucien gently knelt beside her.
You can say goodbye, but not tonight, tonight. You go home.
The elderly woman looked into his eyes. For a long moment, she saw not fear, not urgency, only kindness. Slowly, she placed the photograph into Lucien's hands.
Then help me bring him with us.
Lucien smiled. He tucked the photograph safely inside his coat, then carefully lifted her into his arms. As he turned toward the hallway, a deafening crack echoed through the building. The burning roof had begun to collapse. End of section 7. The sound of splintering wood echoed through the retirement home. The burning roof sagged visibly. Smoke poured through every hallway. Lucien tightened his hold on the elderly woman. Then he ran. The west hallway had become almost unrecognizable. Flames climbed the wallpaper. Broken ceiling panels littered the floor. The air shimmered with unbearable heat. Still, the maintenance staircase remained open. For now, the elderly woman coughed softly against Lucien's shoulder. Her fingers still clutched the edge of his coat.
Don't drop the photograph.
I won't.
He never slowed. One flight, then another. The steel stairs vibrated beneath his feet. Halfway down, a thunderous crash shook the building. The ceiling of the west hallway finally gave way. A wave of sparks exploded upward through the stairwell. The heat struck Lucien's back like an open furnace. He shielded the woman with his own body and kept moving. Outside, Everyone heard the collapse. The firefighters immediately looked toward the roof.
The West Wing's coming down.
Ava instinctively stepped toward the entrance. Ethan caught her arm.
Wait?
She looked at him.
He knows the way?
Ava nodded. But her eyes never left the doorway. Seconds felt like minutes. The smoke grew thicker. The firefighters continued spraying water through shattered windows. Nobody spoke. Everyone watched, waiting. Then a figure emerged from the smoke. Lucien, covered in ash, carrying the last resident. For one heartbeat, the entire parking lot stood frozen. Then everyone moved at once. Firefighters rushed forward. Nurses rolled a wheelchair into place. Volunteers cleared a path. Lucien carefully lowered the elderly woman into the waiting chair. She immediately looked around.
Everyone? Everyone's here.
The elderly woman's shoulders relaxed. Only then did she finally let go of Lucien's coat. A deafening roar erupted behind them. The western section of the roof collapsed completely. Flames shot high into the night sky. Had Lucien arrived even 30 seconds later, neither of them would have escaped. The firefighters immediately pulled everyone farther back. Water continued pouring onto the burning structure. The worst of the fire had now been contained. The building could be repaired. Lives could not tonight. The lives had won. Ethan quickly checked each remaining resident. Room by room, name by name. He looked up from his clipboard.
Count again.
We already did.
Count again.
The nurse nodded. 5 minutes later, she returned.
43, 18 staff. No one missing.
Ethan slowly released the breath he had been holding.
Good.
Across the parking lot, the elderly man Lucien had rescued first slowly stood with the help of his cane. He walked toward Lucien. No one stopped him.
My wife would have liked you.
Lucien smiled gently.
I wish I could have met her.
You did.
The old man pointed toward the sky.
She always believed. When people arrived exactly when they were needed, they weren't strangers. They were answers.
Lucien looked at him quietly. He didn't know what to say, so he simply nodded. Nearby, the elderly woman reached out her hand.
My picture.
Lucien immediately removed the framed photograph from inside his coat. Not even the glass had cracked. She smiled with visible relief.
My husband would have thanked you himself. Lucien shook his head gently.
You don't owe me thanks.
I know.
She looked around the crowded parking lot. Firefighters, nurses, volunteers, neighbors, then back at Lucien.
That is why I am thanking all of you.
For a moment, no one spoke. The only sounds were the hiss of water striking burning wood and the steady crackling of dying flames. One of the younger firefighters removed his helmet. He looked toward Lucien. Without saying a word, he raised one hand in quiet respect. Another firefighter did the same. Then one of the nurses. Then the volunteers. No applause. No cheering. Just a simple gesture of gratitude. Lucien looked almost embarrassed. He lowered his eyes. Ava watched from several steps away. She remembered the man who had once stood alone outside the abandoned garage, convinced that people would leave if they ever saw who he really was. Tonight, the entire town had seen him run into a burning building 3 times. They had seen the soot, the exhaustion, the quiet determination, and not one person had stepped away from him. If anything, they had stepped closer. As the last visible flames disappeared beneath streams of water, the emergency radio on Ethan's belt suddenly crackled to life. A dispatcher's strained voice broke through the static.
Attention, power crews report. This outage is not isolated. Multiple utility substations were deliberately damaged.
Ethan slowly looked toward Lucien. Lucien looked toward Thomas's dark silhouette on the distant hill where Blackwood House overlooked the town. This wasn't over. Not even close. End of Section 8. The worst of the fire was finally over. Only scattered flames remained beneath the collapsed western roof. Firefighters continued spraying water into the building. Steam rose into the freezing night, drifting across the parking lot like pale ghosts around them. Residents stood together beneath blankets, quietly watching the place many of them had called home for years. No one celebrated. They were simply grateful to still be standing together. The volunteers from the church soon arrived with another truck. They brought hot soup, extra blankets, flashlights, portable heaters powered by small camping fuel tanks. Within minutes, the parking lot began transforming into a temporary shelter. Someone unfolded tables. Someone distributed medicine. Someone started making coffee. No one argued over responsibility. Everyone simply found something to do. Lucien stood near the fire engine. His coat was blackened with soot. One sleeve had been burned through near the shoulder. Ash covered his boots. Only now, after the last resident had been accounted for, did he finally allow himself to stop moving. He leaned lightly against the side of the truck. For the first time all night, he looked tired, very tired. A firefighter approached carrying a first aid kit.
Mind if I take a look?
It is only a scratch.
The firefighter gently pulled back the burned fabric. A shallow cut crossed Lucien's forearm. Another bruise had already begun forming beneath the soot.
You've had worse?
I have.
Doesn't mean this one shouldn't be cleaned.
Lucien smiled faintly. He sat down on the lowered rear step of the fire engine. The firefighter quietly disinfected the cut. Nearby several residents noticed, not the wound, the fact that Lucien was finally letting someone help him. Ava walked over carrying 2 steaming paper cups. She handed one to Lucien.
It is not hot chocolate. It is the best we could do.
Lucien accepted it. Warm coffee drifted into the cold night air.
Thank you.
For a while, neither of them spoke. They simply watched firefighters continue their work beneath the floodlights of the emergency vehicles. Water hissed against burning wood. Snow slowly melted around the trucks. The smell of smoke mixed with fresh coffee. Across the parking lot, the little girl from the church spotted Lucien. She tugged gently on her mother's sleeve.
That is him! He carried everyone out!
Her mother smiled. She didn't interrupt. Instead, she quietly waved. Lucien noticed, after a brief hesitation. He raised one hand and waved back. The little girl laughed. Several nearby residents smiled as well. No applause, no cheering, just quiet appreciation. Lucien looked away almost immediately. He still wasn't comfortable being the center of attention. Ava noticed.
You know, I don't think they're looking at a hero.
No?
I think they're looking at their neighbor.
Lucien stared into the cup in his hands. Neighbor. The word settled somewhere deep inside him. For so many years, he had lived in Moonlight Falls. Tonight, for the first time, he truly belonged there. A cold gust of wind swept across the parking lot. Snowflakes drifted from the damaged roof. Ava shivered almost imperceptibly. Without thinking, Lucien moved half a step closer, shielding her from the wind. It was such a small movement that neither of them noticed it. Someone else did. Thomas. He had quietly arrived from Blackwood House only minutes earlier. He watched the two of them from a distance. A gentle smile crossed his face. He said nothing. Ava looked toward the burning building one last time.
We almost lost them?
We didn't.
Number, we didn't.
She let out a slow breath. The tension she had carried since the first emergency call finally began to fade. Only then did she realize how cold her hands had become. Almost instinctively, she rubbed them together. Lucien noticed. Without thinking, he reached out, not dramatically, not deliberately, simply naturally. His fingers found hers, warm, gentle, as though it were the most ordinary thing in the world. Ava looked down, then back up at him. She smiled. Instead of pulling away, she intertwined her fingers with his. Neither of them spoke. They didn't need to. Several firefighters walked past. One of the nurses noticed, Pastor Owen noticed. The elderly couple wrapped in the same blanket noticed. Even the little girl noticed. No one stared. No one whispered. No one seemed surprised. It simply felt right, as though everyone had been waiting for this moment longer than Lucien and Ava themselves. Lucien slowly looked around. For years, he had imagined this exact moment ending differently. He had imagined fear, distance, silence. Instead, the firefighter who had bandaged his arm smiled as he walked by. Pastor Owen tipped his hat. The elderly man with the cane gave him a small nod. Nothing had changed, except everything. Lucien looked back at Ava. His voice was barely above a whisper.
You aren't letting go.
I wasn't planning to.
Lucien smiled. Not the careful smile he showed strangers. Not the tired smile after surviving another difficult night. This one reached his eyes. The first completely unguarded smile Ava had ever seen. Up above them, the clouds finally broke apart. Moonlight slipped through the darkness once again. Its silver light rested quietly over the town, and over the two hands that remained gently clasped together. End of section 9. The firefighters remained at the retirement home long after the flames were under control. Only scattered pockets of smoke still drifted from the damaged roof. Most of the residents had already been transported to the church. Others were settling into temporary rooms at the community center. The long night was far from over. Ethan stood beside one of the ambulances, quietly helping a nurse organize emergency medications. Flashlights rested on the open tailgate. Boxes of supplies were stacked neatly in the snow. His movements were calm, precise, almost mechanical. Lily watched him from several yards away. Something had been bothering her all evening, ever since the blackout began. Every time Ethan thought no one was looking, he touched the inside of his left wrist. Not once, not twice, again and again, almost unconsciously. She had noticed something else during the rescue. Ethan had disappeared behind the ambulance for nearly a minute. When he returned, his face had been unusually pale. He had insisted he was fine. No one questioned him. Everyone had been too busy. Lily hadn't forgotten. She quietly picked up 2 cups of hot soup from a volunteer table. Walking across the parking lot, she stopped beside him.
You skipped dinner.
So did you?
I brought enough for both of us.
Ethan accepted 1 cup for several moments. They stood together in comfortable silence, watching snow drift slowly beneath the emergency lights. Finally, Lily spoke.
You've been hiding something.
Ethan didn't react immediately. He simply stared into the steam rising from the soup.
What makes you think that?
You keep checking your wrist. You disappeared during the fire. And
She hesitated.
you are more tired than you are pretending to be.
Ethan smiled faintly. Not because she was wrong, because she had noticed.
You are observant?
I pay attention.
Neither of them looked away. The sounds of firefighters working echoed softly around them. Nearby, children laughed inside the church bus. Somehow, that ordinary sound made the conversation feel even quieter.
There are things I can't explain.
I know.
And there are things I shouldn't explain.
I know.
Ethan finally turned toward her.
Doesn't that bother you?
It does.
She answered honestly, without accusation, without disappointment. Simply honestly.
But not enough to stop trusting you.
For the first time that evening, Ethan looked genuinely surprised.
I've watched you all day. You never once thought about yourself. You thought about the patients, the firefighters, the residents, Lucien, everyone. So she smiled softly. Whatever you are hiding, I don't think it is because you are a bad person.
Ethan looked away. His expression became unreadable. For a brief moment, he almost spoke. Almost. Instead, he quietly rolled down the cuff of his coat sleeve, covering his wrist completely.
Thank you?
That wasn't an answer.
Number? It wasn't?
Lily laughed softly.
I figured.
She didn't ask another question. She simply stood beside him, drinking her soup, watching the smoke slowly disappear into the night sky. Several minutes passed. Finally, Ethan spoke again. His voice was quieter than before.
When the time comes, I'll tell you.
Lily looked toward him. She could hear the sincerity in his voice. Whatever secret he carried, it wasn't something he enjoyed hiding. It was something he believed he had to protect.
Then I'll wait.
Ethan blinked.
I don't need all the answers tonight. I just need to know. When you are ready, you won't face it alone.
Those words lingered in the cold night air. Only a day earlier, Ava had waited outside a locked garage tonight. Lily had made the same choice in a different way, not demanding, not doubting, simply staying. Ethan lowered his eyes. A faint smile appeared, small, almost invisible, but real.
I hope you won't regret saying that.
I don't think I will.
Far across the parking lot, Lucien happened to glance in their direction. He saw nothing of the conversation, only Ethan and Lily standing side by side beneath the ambulance lights, for reasons he couldn't explain. He smiled quietly. Perhaps some promises began long before the truth was spoken. End of section 10. Nearly 3 hours after the first blackout, the town remained wrapped in darkness. Only emergency vehicles illuminated the streets. Portable generators hummed outside the church. Volunteers continued serving hot meals. Children who had cried earlier were finally asleep beneath borrowed blankets, for the first time that night. Moonlight Falls was quiet. Lucien and Ava helped move the last of the retirement home residents into the church fellowship hall. Rows of folding beds had been prepared. Blankets covered every chair. Someone had found an old piano in the corner. A volunteer quietly played soft hymns. The familiar music eased the room without anyone asking for silence. The elderly woman Lucien had carried from the fire held the rescued photograph in her lap. She smiled as Ava tucked another blanket around her shoulders.
I've lived here for 48 years. I've never seen the whole town show up for one another like this.
I think they always would have. They just never needed to.
The woman nodded thoughtfully. Outside, snow continued falling, gentle, almost peaceful, as though the night wished to erase the smoke that had darkened it. Thomas arrived shortly before midnight. His coat still carried traces of frost from Blackwood House. Lucien immediately noticed the concern in his expression.
The house?
Safe. The archive hasn't been touched.
Lucien relaxed slightly. Then Thomas continued.
But someone was there.
Lucien's expression changed immediately.
You saw them?
Number. I saw what they left behind.
Thomas reached into his coat and unfolded a small plastic evidence bag. Inside lay a broken lockpick. Its metal tip had snapped off.
They knew exactly where they wanted to enter. They just ran out of time.
Lucien studied the broken tool professional, well made, not something carried by an ordinary thief.
They expected the house to be empty.
So did I.
For several moments, no one spoke. The failed break-in and the sabotage now pointed toward the same conclusion. Someone had planned every movement of the night. At that exact moment, a loud click echoed somewhere outside. Then another one. The streetlights flickered, blinking once, twice, then steadily glowing. The church grew noticeably brighter. Children looked toward the windows. Several residents quietly applauded. Someone laughed. A little boy pointed excitedly toward the ceiling.
The lights are back.
Within seconds, the entire fellowship hall filled with relieved smiles. The coffee makers began humming again. The heaters switched back to wall power. The old refrigerator in the church kitchen buzzed to life. Simple sounds. Ordinary sounds. Yet after hours of darkness, they felt almost miraculous. Pastor Owen gently clapped his hands.
Looks like somebody finally won the fight.
Soft laughter spread through the room. Even the exhausted firefighter smiled. Outside, utility trucks slowly rolled through the streets. Workers checked transformers beneath portable floodlights. The town would need days to repair everything. But life had already begun returning. Lucien stepped onto the church porch. The warm yellow glow spilled onto the snow. Ava joined him moments later. For a while, neither of them spoke. They simply watched the light stretching across Moonlight Falls, house after house, street after street. The darkness slowly retreated.
It feels different.
It is.
The lights came back.
Number.
He looked toward the church windows. Inside, neighbors shared food. Children slept safely. Firefighters accepted homemade coffee from strangers. Volunteers folded blankets beside elderly residents.
The people never went out.
Ava smiled. She understood exactly what he meant. The electricity had returned, but hope had never disappeared. Behind them, Thomas quietly watched through the church doorway. His eyes drifted once more toward the evidence bag in his pocket. The broken lockpick wasn't the real question anymore. The real question was, what had the intruder been trying so desperately to reach before the lights came back? Far across town, inside the dark, silent public library, a single flashlight beam swept slowly across the history archives. A shadow moved between the shelves. A cabinet drawer stood open. Old index cards covered the floor. The figure paused for only a second, then carefully removed one thin library ledger from the shelf. Not money, not jewelry, not ancient artifacts, only a worn book filled with handwritten borrowing records from decades ago. The figure tore out a single page, folded it once, placed it inside a coat pocket, then quietly disappeared through the rear exit, just minutes before power returned to Moonlight Falls. End of section 11. The first rays of morning sunlight slowly spread across Moonlight Falls. Smoke still lingered above the retirement home. Fire investigators had already arrived. Yellow safety tape surrounded the damaged building. Neighbors quietly stopped by throughout the morning. Some delivered coffee. Others brought homemade breakfast. The town had survived the longest night in decades. Now it began helping itself heal. Blackwood House was quiet once more. Thomas stood beside the large dining table. Spread across it were photographs from the previous night. The severed generator cable, the broken lockpick, maps of the town, handwritten timelines. Every event had been carefully recorded. Lucien entered carrying 2 mugs of coffee. He placed one beside Thomas.
You've been awake all night.
I don't intend to waste what is still fresh.
Thomas drew a straight line across the map.
Power station, retirement home, the fallen tree, Blackwood House, the hospital.
He tapped each location.
5 separate incidents. 1 plan.
Lucien nodded. Nothing about the previous night had been random. Everything had happened at exactly the right moment. Simona had carefully choreographed the chaos. A knock interrupted the conversation. Ethan entered. His coat was still dusty from the fire.
You should be sleeping.
So should you?
No one argued. Instead, Ethan placed a folder on the table.
The fire investigators ruled out an electrical accident. They found traces of an accelerant?
Thomas wasn't surprised.
Arson.
They aren't saying it publicly. Not yet?
Silence settled over the room. The retirement home hadn't simply caught fire. Someone had wanted it to burn. Another vehicle stopped outside. A moment later, a woman hurried through the front door carrying several folders against her chest. She was still catching her breath.
Mr. Blackwood, I am sorry for arriving unannounced.
Thomas immediately recognized her. She was the director of Moonlight Falls Public Library.
What happened?
She carefully placed several old ledgers on the table. One of them had been wrapped in protective paper. Her hands trembled slightly.
We opened the library this morning. Everything looked normal. Nothing valuable was missing.
She hesitated, then slowly opened one of the ledgers. Several pages had been carefully numbered, between 2 entries. One page was gone, neatly removed, not torn, cut.
Only this.
Lucien leaned closer. The book wasn't rare. It wasn't expensive. It was simply an old circulation ledger. Each page listed names, dates, and the books borrowed decades earlier.
Which year?
1998.
Thomas looked up. That answer caught his attention immediately. The librarian continued.
The person knew exactly where to look. They ignored the computers, the archives, the donations. They walked straight to the basement records, straight to this shelf.
Lucien studied the clean cut along the binding. Whoever had removed the page had prepared for it. Thomas quietly turned another page. Then another. He finally reached the missing section. Only the page number remained. Everything else, gone.
What was recorded there?
Borrowing records. Nothing more.
She sounded almost embarrassed. It seemed impossible that someone would sabotage an entire town just to steal a library record. Thomas didn't share that opinion. He slowly removed his glasses, cleaned them, placed them back on. And Yon, who knew him, recognized the habit. He always did that when something dangerous finally made sense.
Who checked this ledger out most often?
The librarian frowned.
No one. It never left the archive.
Thomas looked directly at her.
I didn't ask about the ledger. I asked about the names on the missing page.
The room fell silent. The librarian searched her memory slowly. A single name surfaced.
There was one person. She came several times, years ago. She kept asking for local history, old newspaper files, borrowing records, property documents.
Thomas already knew the answer before she spoke it.
Emily Carter.
No one moved Emily. Again. Her name had appeared in Victor's photographs, in the recorder, in the abandoned quarry, and now in a library ledger someone had risked everything to erase. Lucien looked toward Thomas.
They weren't trying to hide the past.
Thomas slowly closed the ledger.
Number they were trying to hide. What Emily was searching for.
Outside, morning sunlight filled the windows of Blackwood House. Inside, the mystery had only grown deeper. End of section 12. The library grew quiet again after the librarian left. The missing ledger remained on the table. Morning sunlight stretched slowly across its worn leather cover. No one reached for it. Everyone was thinking about the same name. Emily. Thomas finally stood. Without saying a word, he walked toward the archive room. Lucien and Ava exchanged a glance before following him. Ethan remained at the table for a moment longer. His eyes lingered on the missing page. Then he quietly joined the others. The archive room occupied the oldest wing of Blackwood House. Shelves reached nearly to the ceiling. Boxes, journals, maps, and photographs filled every corner. The room smelled faintly of cedar and old paper. Sunlight filtered through stained glass windows, casting patches of blue and amber across the floor. Thomas stopped in front of a long cabinet. He unlocked it with a small brass key. Inside were dozens of neatly labeled document boxes. Each represented a different decade of the town's history. He carefully removed one marked 1995 to 2000. He carried it to the table. Inside lay newspaper clippings, building permits, property surveys, personal correspondence. Most had never been digitized. Thomas handled every page with practiced care. After several minutes, he found what he was searching for. A folded newspaper clipping, yellowed with age. The headline read, Thomas unfolded the article. A photograph accompanied it. Standing beside several shelves of newly donated books was Victor Blackwood, and beside him, Emily, much younger, smiling. Ava leaned closer.
They knew each other.
Better than most people realized.
Lucien studied the article.
She wasn't investigating him.
Number she was working with him.
Thomas carefully turned the clipping over. Victor had written something by hand on the back. Only one sentence. Ava read the words twice. They sounded less like a note and more like a warning. Thomas continued searching. Another envelope. Another photograph. This one had no date. Emily stood alone inside the public library basement. The shelves around her were overflowing with old county records. She wasn't looking at the camera. She was looking down at an open ledger, the same style of ledger that now lay on the dining table upstairs. Lucien frowned.
So she found it years ago.
Apparently.
Thomas reached inside the envelope once more. A folded sheet of notebook paper slipped out. Emily's handwriting, recognizable immediately. Only half the page remained. The bottom portion had been torn away long ago. Thomas began reading aloud. The sentence ended there. The remainder of the page was missing. Silence filled the archive room. Lucien slowly exhaled.
So even Emily's own notes were incomplete.
Or made incomplete.
Ava looked thoughtfully at the faded handwriting.
She must have realized someone was watching.
Thomas nodded slowly.
If she believed these notes were dangerous, destroying half of them may have been intentional.
Ethan had remained unusually quiet. He continued reading the fragment over and over. Finally, he spoke.
What if everyone looked toward him? She didn't destroy the rest? What if she hid it?
The room fell silent again. Thomas considered the possibility. It fit Emily perfectly. She had never been careless. She had always planned 2 steps ahead. If she expected someone to erase the evidence, she would have left another trail. Thomas carefully placed the fragment back into its envelope, then looked toward Victor's recovered archive from the truck accident. Dozens of unopened boxes still lined the wall. They had postponed examining them because of the blackout. Now, there was no reason to wait.
We start opening Victor's collection. Everything.
Lucien nodded. Ava rolled up her sleeves without another word. Even Ethan managed a faint smile. The search had finally become clearer. They no longer needed to guess what Emily had been doing. They needed to discover what she had found outside. Across the street from Blackwood House, a dark sedan remained parked beneath snow-covered trees. Its engine was off, its windows slightly tinted. Inside, Simona lowered a pair of binoculars. The front door of Blackwood House remained clearly visible. The observer reached into a coat pocket, removed a single folded sheet of paper, the paper taken from the library ledger. A thumb slowly brushed across one handwritten name. Then, the engine quietly started. The sedan pulled away without attracting a single glance. End of section 13. By early afternoon, the dining room at Blackwood House had become an investigation room. Victor's archive boxes covered nearly every table. Some contained photographs. Others held journals, newspaper clippings, cassette tapes, and carefully labeled envelopes. Each box represented another fragment of a story someone had tried very hard to preserve. Thomas opened the first wooden crate. Inside, every folder had been numbered by Victor himself. His handwriting remained as neat as ever. Nothing appeared random. Victor had expected someone else to continue his work. Ava carefully lifted out several photographs. Most showed ordinary moments. School festivals, harvest celebrations, children fishing beside Moonlight Creek. Nothing unusual. Until one photograph made her stop.
Lucien?
He walked over. The photograph showed the annual Founders Festival from nearly 30 years earlier. Hundreds of townspeople smiled toward the camera. Emily stood near the center. Victor stood beside her. Nothing strange, at first. Lucien narrowed his eyes. Near the edge of the crowd, almost hidden behind a tree, a man stood facing neither the camera nor the festival. He was watching Emily. Only Emily. His face was partly obscured by shadow, too indistinct to identify, but deliberate enough to feel wrong.
He wasn't there to celebrate.
Thomas took the photograph. He studied it in silence.
Number. He was observing.
Ethan enlarged the image on a portable scanner. The resolution improved slightly. Still, the man's face remained frustratingly unclear. Only one detail stood out. A silver signet ring, worn on his right hand. The crest engraved on it had blurred beyond recognition. Thomas frowned. Something about it felt familiar. Very familiar, but the memory remained just beyond reach. Meanwhile, Ava continued sorting another stack of documents. Several envelopes contained letters exchanged between Victor and Emily. Most discussed historical records, old property deeds, family names, nothing remarkable. Then, one envelope felt different. It was thicker, heavier. Its seal had never been opened. Across the front, Victor had written only 4 words. The room became completely silent. Lucien looked toward Thomas. No one spoke. Finally, Thomas nodded once.
I believe it has become necessary.
Ava carefully opened the envelope. Inside was only a single folded page. No greeting, no signature, only a short handwritten note. Thomas quietly read it aloud. He turned the page over. Nothing. Only those 3 sentences. Lucien slowly repeated the final line.
Follow what remains.
What does that even mean?
Thomas didn't answer immediately. Instead, he looked across the room, at every unopened archive box, at every photograph Victor had chosen to save. Then understanding slowly appeared in his eyes.
We've been asking the wrong question.
What question?
What was stolen?
He gently placed the note beside the missing library ledger.
Victor wasn't worried about what someone would take. He was worried about what they couldn't take.
Silence settled over the room. That changed everything. Instead of chasing missing evidence, they needed to understand the evidence that had survived. Lucien walked toward the shelves lining the archive room. One shelf contained nothing but local maps, survey maps, property maps, trail maps, waterway maps. One rolled map caught his attention. Unlike the others, it wasn't labeled. He carefully unrolled it. The map showed Moonlight Falls exactly as it had existed decades ago. Old roads, buildings that no longer stood, logging trails reclaimed by the forest. Simone had marked several locations with small circles in faded blue ink. The library, the church, Blackwood House, the abandoned quarry, Moonlight Creek, and one final location, a place with no name, only a handwritten symbol, a crescent moon. Ava stepped beside him.
I've never seen that mark before.
Thomas immediately crossed the room. The moment he saw the symbol, his expression changed. Not fear, recognition. Quiet, unmistakable recognition.
Victor never drew anything without a reason.
Before anyone could ask another question, a sharp electronic beep interrupted the silence. Everyone turned. The security monitor beside the front hallway had come back online after the blackout. One camera automatically refreshed. Then another finally. The driveway camera displayed its stored recordings from the previous night. Ethan opened the replay. The timestamp showed the exact moment Lucien and Ava had left for the church. A dark sedan slowly appeared at the end of the driveway. It stopped. Its headlights switched off. No one got out. The vehicle waited. Exactly 7 minutes. Then quietly drove away. Thomas watched the screen without blinking.
They were watching the house?
Number.
Thomas rewound the footage, frame by frame. The sedan never looked toward the front entrance. Its camera, mounted discreetly behind the windshield, pointed toward only one place: the archive room windows.
They already knew where Victor kept his records.
The room fell silent once again. This wasn't an opportunistic burglary. Simone had been watching Blackwood House long before the blackout. Watching, waiting, planning. And somehow, they already knew exactly where the answers were hidden. End of section 14. Evening settled quietly over Blackwood House. The archive room was still illuminated by warm table lamps. Open folders covered nearly every available surface. Maps, photographs, letters, library records. Every piece seemed connected, yet none of them explained why a single missing page had been worth sabotaging an entire town. Thomas remained standing beside the wall map. His eyes never left the small crescent moon Victor had drawn decades earlier. Finally, he spoke.
We spent the entire day asking what was erased. He shook his head. Victor wanted us to ask something else.
Lucien looked up.
What survived?
Exactly.
Thomas carefully rolled up the old map, then placed it beside Victor's handwritten note. The two items now felt inseparable. Ava continued sorting the remaining archive boxes. Hours had passed. Most contained ordinary town history, tax records, school newsletters, festival programs. Nothing connected directly to Emily. Until her fingers paused. Hidden beneath a stack of property surveys lay a small leather notebook. No title, no label. Its cover had faded almost completely. Only the initials were still visible.
Thomas?
Everyone immediately gathered around. Thomas opened the notebook carefully. The first several pages contained nothing unusual. Dates, addresses, book references, research notes. Emily's handwriting was unmistakable, small, orderly, meticulous. Page after page described her investigation into Moonlight Falls, library collections, historical photographs, old family records, everything they had already suspected. Then the writing changed, shorter, more urgent, as if she had stopped writing for history and started writing for survival. Thomas quietly read aloud. The room grew still. Emily had known. Years ago, she had known someone else was following the same trail. Thomas turned another page. Then another. Each note became shorter, almost hurried. Lucien slowly looked toward the library ledger on the table. Someone who had removed the page. But perhaps not every copy. Thomas reached the final written page. Only a single sentence remained. The next page had been cut away perfectly, cleanly. Just like the library ledger, no one spoke. The silence seemed heavier than the blackout. Emily had left them one final message. Simone had removed it. Ava gently turned the notebook over. Something slipped from the back cover. A small folded piece of paper, no larger than a postcard. It had been hidden inside the binding itself. Thomas unfolded it carefully. Inside, only a hand-drawn map. No words. No explanation. Only 5 familiar locations connected by a thin blue line. Blackwood House, the public library, the church, Moonlight Creek, the abandoned quarry. Exactly the same 5 locations marked on Victor's old survey map. But there was one difference. At the center of the line, Emily had added another symbol, a tiny circle, surrounded by a crescent moon. Lucien frowned.
That is not on Victor's map.
Number.
Thomas looked at the two maps side by side. His breathing slowed. Recognition spread gradually across his face. Not surprise. Certainty. He knew what he was looking at.
You recognize it?
Thomas didn't answer immediately instead. He folded Emily's map with extraordinary care, placed it back inside the notebook, closed the cover, then looked toward Lucien.
I know where she wanted us to go.
Lucien's expression sharpened.
Where?
Thomas walked toward the window. Outside, Moonlight Falls shimmered beneath fresh snow. The lights had returned. The streets looked peaceful once again. Yet, somewhere beneath that peaceful town, someone had spent decades hiding the truth. Thomas finally spoke. His voice was calm, certain, almost solemn.
We leave at sunrise.
Far beyond Blackwood House. A dark sedan stopped on a lonely overlook above the valley. The driver unfolded the stolen library page one last time. A lighter clicked. The paper caught fire. Within seconds. Only drifting ashes remained. The driver watched them disappear into the night, then quietly whispered,
They're already too late.
The sedan disappeared down the mountain road. Behind it,